There is some high upside on this team, but there's also a growing concern that needed to be answered yesterday.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. You can find the podcast wherever you find podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Pods, you name it, at Locked On Golden Gophers. Be sure to leave a 5-star review so others can find the podcast and tune into the community, join the community, and join it over on YouTube, where we've got a nice, healthy channel building up. We've got people jumping in the comments, giving their thoughts and feedback, and I love it. I absolutely love it. So I want to know what you're intrigued by, what you're concerned by. Drop them in the comments. I'll chat with you in there, or I'll take notes for future shows. Hit subscribe over on YouTube, and today we are talking the spring practice, because the first spring practice was yesterday. I was there in attendance with other media members and some of the public as well, and we've got some takeaways. We've got some thoughts. Now, one thing we got to stress with that is nothing we saw yesterday is a lock. There is still a lot up in the air. There's only been 4 official practices so far, so don't think you're going to these practices and you have the lock, you know the starters, because it's not even close. In fact, both Coach Rossi and Coach Fleck in the pressers after that said practice both mentioned a lot of these players are working for opportunities to be able to have opportunities to make a shot, make a play for a starting role in fall camp. Fall camp is where true starting decisions are made. So a lot is still up in the air, but you're getting a little bit of a glimpse, a little bit of an insight to what the Gophers are looking for. And I think the Gophers football program is in healthy shape, but there is one major concern that is getting bigger as we continue to get along in this spring session. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. Now, like I said, we're going to talk about what we saw at the practice. Now, we're going to start on the defensive side of the ball, and we're going to talk about that number one concern because, man, oh man, did it get bigger yesterday, and that is the cornerback room. Now, if you've listened to the show, if you listened to me and House talk before the spring practices about the different things we were looking for and what concerned me, even in an episode before that, I told you the room that is the most concerned for me, Kane Rob, here at Locked On Golden Gophers, is the cornerback room. And it gets even more worrisome because Ryan Stapp officially announced, not him, but Coach Fleck announced yesterday that Ryan Stapp is no longer on the roster. Not exactly sure on the reasoning itself, if it'll be a transfer related, if it'll be something like we saw with Katie Buckets with a medical retirement. Who knows? We don't know the full details on it, but what we do know is he's no longer on the roster, which means the cornerback room gets even shallower. Now, if you're wondering how shallow it is, the Gophers team has guys that play safety. The Gophers team has guys that play specifically nickel, but maybe work a little bit between corner and safety. And then you've got some straight up outside cornerbacks. Now, if you're looking at that outside cornerbacks room yesterday, and you're just looking at them in their specific indie drills in some periods, then you would know that the Gophers have 5. That's right, 5 outside cornerbacks working with on this roster. And only one of them has playtime experience. One single outside cornerback has playtime experience on this team, and that is Justin Wally. Now, Justin Wally's been taking strides forward. He's been a guy that's produced since his freshman year. He's walking into bigger leadership opportunities. He's showing more as a vocal leader. He's showing more as helping these other guys make adjustments, which is absolutely what you love to see from a veteran like that. But we need more than 1 or 2 guys to step up in this room because we need some depth. Because if you're looking across the Big Ten, and this is why it's the biggest worry for me, if you're looking across the Big Ten, you're seeing teams starting to build like they could really attack in the passing games. You've got Wisconsin that's completely shaking things up, going more of an air raid approach as opposed to their typical ground and pound. And the way they're building things. Nebraska is building things with a ton of speed, a ton of athletes on the outside. And so you can imagine they're going to get ready to attack more through the air. Who knows what Purdue is going to do with their new coach? And a lot of that is still up in the air. Illinois lost their big time running back. And so, but they maintained their big time receiver. You can imagine they're going to try to attack more through the air. And the list goes on and on. You've got Michigan on the schedule, who JJ McCarthy is coming into his own. Plus, they have 3 true freshmen from last year that all redshirt, that Coach John Harbaugh talked about how they are some of the best freshman receivers that he's had come through in his time there. So if JJ McCarthy is coming into his own, if Blake Corum is taking some time to get back, they could be going through the air a lot more. We've got Ohio State on the schedule who's going through the air more. You've got Drake May, a Heisman candidate, one of the top prospects of the 2024 draft at UNC, who is going to throw the ball through the air. The Gophers have a lot of teams on this schedule this year that are going to pass the ball a heck of a lot. And when Coach Joe Rossi was asked yesterday, what are the areas of improvement that he's looking for? A lot of it was in the man coverage area. And there was one other coverage spot that were 2 of the top 3 of his concerns or things that are looking to improve from last year. Well, in order to improve in those areas too, you need the athletes and the bodies to do it. And right now, I don't know if they have the bodies to do it. They might have the athletes, but what happens if an injury happens? What happens if someone goes down? What happens if someone becomes ineligible academically? There's so many things that can happen in the college landscape that it gives me a lot of concern. Now, I'd be shocked if the Gophers don't add 1, maybe even 2 people in the transfer portal after these spring sessions conclude and that second portal window opens. So definitely hit subscribe so you're not missing out as we find more out about new additions after the spring session. And as we learn how some of these guys are growing into bigger roles, because like I said, there's only 5 cornerbacks in that cornerback room. 6 once Zaquan Bryant enters the room in the fall as a fall freshman. But I believe only 4 of those 6 are truly scholarship players. Now, all of that said, Zaquan Bryant has the athleticism and the talent. Coach Fleck said that himself, that he could push for opportunity when he talked about him in the class breakdown that Coach Fleck gave us back earlier this year. Now, if you talk about that, you talk about the athleticism, you talk about Zaquan Bryant being a guy who works super hard, he definitely could push for some opportunities and to be a guy to try and get some minutes in this room that is already pretty sparse. And he's going to have the same amount of understanding, maybe even a little bit more than some of the new transfers coming in from a portal, if you add from a portal. So really anything can happen. Anything is up in the air. Anything can go, but it definitely needs to be addressed. So that was number 1, because with that Stapp departure, with a Beanie Bishop departure, with T-Time going to the NFL, there are so many Gophers corners no longer with us. But on the flip side, when you look at the nickel spot yesterday, you saw Jack Henderson, and man, oh man, I apologize because the last few episodes I switch on and off between saying Henderson and Hendrickson, and I got to get it right because this dude is a baller. So Jack Henderson was absolutely balling yesterday, and I am excited to see what continues to develop there. I talked with a couple of other Gophers media members out there, and a lot of them were surprised that he didn't get more looks at some other Power 5 programs when he came into the transfer portal, but that only benefits the Gophers because he's here, he's ready to ball out, and he is making an impact on the media members, he's making an impact on his teammates, and he is making an impact on the coaches. That is definitely a name you're going to want to circle, you're going to want to know, because I think he is going to play a lot, and I mean a lot, probably like Flip Dixon level minutes at that nickel position. So Jack Henderson is a name to know. Now, if you've been listening to the show, you know Rylan Kelly is the cornerback that I am very intrigued in, and I think he's really going to step up to the plate and see himself gain more opportunity. He has loads of potential. He's got the size, but he's still working out kinks at the moment, so we'll see how fast he can learn, how much he can put it together over these next few weeks of spring before we get to the spring game on April 22nd. But if he starts to put it together, he starts to really dive in and clean up and hone, I do believe he can make a name for himself. In fact, he could maybe be on that opposite cornerback position from Justin Wally. So continue to keep an eye on him. Now let's talk about Trill. Trill's departure. We already talked about all that, but I had mentioned, I really think that there's some youth up there that was pushing for his minutes, pushing for his opportunity, and I think that could have led to why he transferred, which is why I wasn't fully concerned about the transfer. I am more staked on that claim, staked on that position, because we saw a lot, and I mean a healthy amount of Devin Eastern. Let me say it right again. Devin Eastern yesterday at the practice, and you know what? I think he's going to have a big impact on this defensive line. And when you're talking about Devin Eastern, you're impressed with the size. He has a Big Ten body and the length. His arms and his reach and his length could be a massive weapon for the interior defensive line in that 3-tech defensive tackle position. Now, I believe he was already pushing Trill with opportunities, and now it is his time. The biggest thing for Devin Eastern is, look, you have the talent, you have the size, you have the ability. Now, the biggest thing for him is the self-belief, the building the confidence, the having the swagger of sorts, because the greats in college, the greats in the pros, they have that. They develop that mental toughness, that edge, knowing, you know what? I'm going to always work hard. I'm going to always push, but I know I'm that dude. So getting that and developing that, the sky could be the limit for him. And I think working with Coach Winston, Coach Debo, I think he is going to develop that more and more. He's going to come into his own, and I think he's going to be a big time player for the Golden Gophers on that defensive line. So even talking about that mental toughness, you look at someone like Caitlin Clark, Iowa basketball player, absolutely the face of college basketball when it comes to the women's programs right now. She's like Steph Curry, the female Steph Curry. I mean, she's out there balling. She's a dog. She's John Cena in the face of some of these opponents. Like, she is an absolute blast to watch. And she has talked to the media, literally saying some of the biggest things for me and really helping me attain those high levels, helping me attain the best of my ability is knowing that mental toughness and self-confidence that I can do it. I am that person and I don't have to feel bad about it. That's huge. So that is something that hopefully we'll see from Devin Eastern as he continues to grow into his own. Now, speaking of young defensive linemen, Ja Joyner, Danny Strigout, they might be the names on the outside starting and really taking the most opportunities. Batman and Robin, you name it. But oh my, Anthony Smith is coming. And they can be the starters right now. But Anthony Smith will make himself known from the jump. I think he's going to push for time. I think he's going to push for opportunities. It doesn't matter if he's with the 2s or rotating with 3s at times. He's going to find a way. You can just tell. And he's fluid. He's athletic. He has reach. He has bend. And I am very intrigued, very excited. And even early on, hear me when I say this, I think he is really going to press for opportunity this season. So I am excited there. Another thing we can kind of start to lock in is the fact that Darius Green is probably most likely that safety across from Tyler Nubin, filling the Jordan Howden role. Coleman Bryson looks like he's going to be developing into that Tyler Nubin role, so he could get some spot minutes, some spot opportunities throughout the year, and maybe he pushes and gets a little bit for Darius Green in the opposite role as well, but it looks like Darius Green will be the focus guy on that Howden role for this season, and we will continue to keep an eye on that. And then the last thing I want to say is there's still a lot of potential on this defense. It's a hardworking group, but there's still a lot of things to come together. They might not be as fast as what we saw from last year's defense, flying around the field, the true speed and the comeback speed that they had last year, but I think that this team might pack a bigger punch when it comes to hits, when it comes to being there to jar the ball out. I think this team is going to be very aggressive, very physical on defense, and it is going to be a fun one to watch. Now, that's everything when it comes to the defense, but the offense is still something we have to talk about, especially the surprises that we maybe saw on some of these O-line combinations, and maybe an idea at slight differences in approaches with that offense. We're going to talk about that coming up next. First, a word from our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is absolutely the place you want to be when it comes to sportsbooks, because they are America's #1 sportsbook. And that's, if you're a new member, it's a perfect time because FanDuel is giving new customers a no sweat first bet when it comes to their opportunities. You can win up to $1,000 in bonus bets, and that's just by going to FanDuel.com/lockedon. And if you lose your first bet, if it doesn't win, then you have up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. Sign up today again at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook of Locked On and America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Gophers fans, I just want to say I am truly appreciative for the listening, for the following, for the subscribes over on YouTube, and continue to do that for me. But thank you for making Locked On Golden Gophers your first listen when it comes to Gophers daily sports. Now we got to flip over to the notes for the offensive side of the ball. And the first thing we're going to talk about there is the offensive line. Now, if I'm being real with you, if I'm keeping it 100, I'm telling you that what you saw from the offensive line yesterday could absolutely be nothing that ends up being the starters for the actual season. There's so much that can still change and happen. And there were so many different unique combinations that the Gophers were playing with yesterday. But two things that absolutely I loved, and maybe you can start to settle and lock in, is the left tackle Ariante Urser. We've already talked about that. He's basically locked in at that spot. But what I loved was the right side of the line that we saw a majority, if not all of the ones reps yesterday, with Quinn Carroll at right guard and Martez Lewis at right tackle. Now, again, that might not be how they end up finishing, but I love the combination. I love the pairing right there. And I think that pairing holds a lot of upside, not only this year, but they would both be eligible next year as well. And that could be something very great for this Gophers team. So you're talking about a left tackle, right guard, right tackle that could all be locked in for not just this year, but multiple years moving forward. So that leaves the center, that leaves the left guard, if that was to be locked in. And that's where you saw a lot of the different combinations yesterday. Now, there were 3 players that played any amount of snaps at center. That's it. 3 that took center snaps yesterday. And that is Nathan Bowe, that is Carter Shaw, and that is Cade McConnell. Now, Cade McConnell really only took snaps with the threes, with some of the Rofer type looks. And so that is probably not someone you're going to see starting at the center position this season, but that might give you a glimpse into what future seasons could look like if there isn't a true center prospect, a true center recruit added through the portal or through signing classes moving forward. Cade McConnell working there a little bit, also working at the guard positions. But when you're talking about starters for this year, it's either going to be Nathan Bowe or it's going to be Carter Shaw. Those were the 2 that took any type of 1 snaps. Those were the 2 taking a majority amount of the 2 snaps, rotating between them as well. One of those 2 players is likely to be the center moving forward, unless there is an address in the portal. Again, we never know. PJ Fleck has flat out stated you don't know what your roster looks like till you get to July, because there are all these portals. We're going to have more departures after the spring. We're going to have more additions after the spring. They know that. They know that for a fact because it always happens. That is the college landscape today. So don't get too concerned. Don't get too shocked when you see more names in the portal, because there's probably more names joining us from the portal as well. A lot up in the air in the new college landscape, but what we're seeing from that center position, a lot of Nathan Bowe, a good amount of Carter Shaw. And if I had to make a guess right now, I think Nathan Bowe would be the starter for this offensive line at the center position if we had to make a decision today. Still a lot up in the air, but left guard, that's where the most intrigue was for me watching yesterday, because you saw a lot of Tyler Cooper at that first with the ones at the left guard. You saw some opportunities from Nathan Bowe when Carter Shaw would move to center. Nathan Bowe would move over to the left guard. You saw Carter Shaw play a little bit of left guard, especially with some of the 2 sessions. You saw Greg Johnson pushing for some of the 2's opportunities at the left guard. The true freshman himself putting in work, showing effort, showing that he is not going to just be pushed away or be pushed off as a development guy. He's trying to push for opportunity now, and it's already early spring. We're talking practice number 4. So if he continues to develop and continues to make it click and push and continues to work off the field as well, and that's something we'll talk about a little bit later, but the extra work, if he continues to put in the extra work and do the extra things, I would not be surprised to see him really push and make a name for himself to try and grab that left guard position that is wide open, in my opinion. So a lot to look at with the offensive line. Now, other players that we saw in the 2s after a lot of those ones were taking reps. Like I said, Greg Johnson in the twos for the left guard position. We saw Cade McConnell work with mainly the threes, but a little bit of twos at the center. We saw Ashton Beers in there at the right guard at times. We saw, let me break out my cheat sheet here. Not Tyler Cooper. Who is that? Ashton Beers, we saw at the right guard. We saw JJ Gaudet out at the right tackle at times. We saw lots of guys out there. Tony Nelson out there, left tackle behind Ariante Ursary. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of depth, a lot of youth on this team, that the O-line position should be healthy moving forward, but that gives you a glimpse into maybe some of these guys that will make the travel roster, be there in case of injury, be there for starting opportunities, and so much more to push for more opportunities as we move forward. So that's a little bit of the feel for the offensive line. Now, one thing that was very prevalent in yesterday's practice is I think this Gophers team is ready to take more shots down the field, more explosive plays, not only through the air with all of the different pass catchers with Corey Crooms, Elijah Spencer. Daniel Jackson absolutely balled out yesterday, and he's looking more and more like he can truly be a wide receiver one, which is amazing, because if you have him playing like I'm a wide receiver one, you have Chris Bell playing like I'm a wide receiver one, and you've got absolutely dominant threat Brevin Spanford at the tight end position playing like I am a number one target. That is a whole lot of threats that you can space the field with, which can allow the Gophers to pass more, allow Ethan to shine more, and allow the running game to open up more with maybe players that we haven't seen get any opportunities at this Big Ten level. So I think there's a lot of upside in this offense. Now, if you have more explosives and more chances, more risks, that also means you might have more turnovers if you can't start to figure out the windows and the opportunities that you have, figure out how well you can place the ball. And so that is a lot of what Ethan Kaliakmanis was doing in yesterday's practice, and probably all of the early practices so far, is really feeling out the progress, feeling out what he can get away with and what he can't, what works, what doesn't, what opportunities can he take a shot, and maybe should he hold back because it could be more turnover worthy. I think you're seeing him feel that process out. You're seeing some absolute dots and dimes, and you're seeing some turnover-worthy plays as well. Like I said, I think that'll clean up as we get to fall camp, because he's right now, why wouldn't you try? Why wouldn't you take a feel? Why wouldn't you throw some of those risky ones to see how often can I get that in there? Is it more often batted down, turned over, or am I able to get away with this route? Am I able to get away with this look? Am I able... Now is the time to learn those things, especially as you're going to be the QB1 moving forward. So when you see these interceptions in these early practices, I don't get too concerned, because it's honestly a good thing, because he's starting to feel it out and really get a feel for how he can proceed forward with risk management. Now, overall, the offense looks a lot more aggressive with him at the quarterback, especially compared to Kramer, Jacob Knuth, and Drew Vioto getting a feel in there. I think, well, I know you can lock him in at QB1. We all know this, but I think that the aggressiveness that he is playing with, and the confidence and the swagger that he seems to present, I love it. I love the leadership that is continuing to build from within for him. I love the looks that we're starting to see. I love the shots that we're starting to see, the placement of some of these balls. Ethan Kaliakmanis, man, I'm telling you, the Big Ten is going to underrate him. The national media, the Big Ten networks, all of that, they're going to put him in that maybe 8 through 10 quarterback in the Big Ten and all that. No, I'm telling you, this dude is going to be special as he works through this, and as he gets to by game one against Nebraska, you're going to see a special talent out there on the field. I'm excited for it. I truly believe he's a top 6 quarterback in the Big Ten and has high upside to be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. And that is something the Gophers have not had in quite some time. So I'm excited by all of that. One last thing we got to talk about here is the running backs and the wide receivers. So first off, with the running backs, you saw a lot of Zach Evans with the ones, a lot of Bryce Williams with the ones, and a lot of Sean Tyler with the twos. Darius Taylor tweaked something yesterday. Coach Flex said he's going to be fine, but they did hold him out of a majority of practice yesterday, so we didn't see a lot of Darius Taylor out there. But Zach Evans and Bryce Williams with the ones, Sean Tyler with a lot of the twos. Now, that shouldn't concern you, as people have been like, well, you guys have been saying Sean Tyler's going to play a lot. He probably will. But you got to think Sean Tyler has no experience with this playbook overall. And Zach Evans and Bryce Williams still have a year's worth of understanding in this playbook. Yes, you might have different OCs as opposed to Kirk Shiraka, but the playbook and the concepts, a lot of them are similar. There are some new ones that we saw yesterday, but a lot of it is similar. So they still have a better understanding and they will play more fluid in these earlier practices. We'll see what happens as it continues to progress. But I am really intrigued and enticed by the running back room and the upside it can bring. Now, flipping to the wide receivers, this is where a lot of people have questions, and I think we'll continue to have questions moving forward, but names that really stood out to me. So you should know Chris Ottman-Bell isn't out there playing right now. He's still rehabbing, trying to get back. Brevin Spanport is not out there and playing right now. He is also rehabbing, getting back from some cleanup work this offseason. So you're going to see a lot of younger guys stepping into these opportunities, which might be a good thing for the Gophers, because that is how you continue to build the depth and see what you have below some of your stars and some of your starters. As they continue to build confidence, be familiar with the looks, get more fluid in that offense, it only helps you moving forward. So that is the blessing in disguise with those two guys coming back, is you're getting a lot of looks for Gears. You're getting a lot of good looks for Brockington, who seems to be playing a lot of the Chris Ottman-Bell role. And then you're getting a lot of looks for these new transfers coming. Kenrick Lanier was playing in with some of the twos throughout yesterday's team period. So a lot of good, healthy looks for a lot of these players. So that is something that you should be intrigued by. Now, the two names that stood out the most to me were Daniel Jackson, who absolutely was the best receiver on the day yesterday, made some amazing catches, made some tight window grabs, made some big plays and took a shot, held on, and that was impressive in itself. Coach Fleck had to stop the practice after the shot because you shouldn't be hitting your guys like that. Plus, it could be a penalty, and there were a lot more stoppages in yesterday's practice than you would have seen from last year's practice, because this is a lot younger of a team and they have to learn more about what the program is, what the standard is, what the ideal looks they want to have as a team and who they are as a program. More stoppages to really emphasize that by Coach Fleck. So you're going to see a lot more of that throughout the time as well. But Daniel Jackson absolutely balled out. He is by far the guy in that room right now. Until Chris Ottman-Bell comes back, then maybe you have two guys. But right now, Daniel Jackson has separated himself, in my opinion. But another guy I'm really intrigued by, played a lot with the twos yesterday, but gets some opportunities with the ones, and I think he has the upside to be a big player in this offense, is Elijah Spencer. He has the build. He can go up there and win a contested ball. He looks really smooth with his route running and with how he moves on the field. He kind of glides a little bit. I'm not talking about super speed beats you, but he moves effortlessly, and that was really intriguing to me. So he is someone I'm encouraged by moving forward. Those two really stood out to me the most. But one thing that I will say with Christian Hoskins is that dude can fly. Now, he's still building confidence. He's still gotta catch the ball on a few occasions, but when the ball gets in his hands, he's a threat. He's a dangerous man out there. And there are a lot of people that cannot fully catch this man. So I would not be surprised to see him worked into the offense more and more. But I would love to see him in more shorter areas. We saw one or two tunnel screens yesterday thrown to him, and he created from it, even when a play looked dead from the jump. He's got that type of speed. So that is very intriguing, something this Gophers room hasn't necessarily had. It'll be intriguing to see how they incorporate that more. Now, that is everything with the offense, but what are the final things? What are the little things that you have to keep an eye on moving forward? Because there is still a whole lot that can change and a whole lot that will change. We're going to talk about the key top 5 things to continue to monitor over spring practice coming up next. Gophers fans, we're going to wrap this one up with the 5 top things that you have to keep in mind moving forward in these spring practices, and they absolutely are the priorities for this team moving forward. But it's nothing to be too worried about outside of that cornerback room. I'm telling you, that cornerback room gives me a little bit of nightmares, not because the talent couldn't be in there, but because it's just so shallow, and the Big Ten is looking to pass the ball more and more. Our schedule is going to see a ton of teams that pass the ball a ton, and we need a lot more experience, depth, talent in that room. So that is absolutely priority number one, is how can Minnesota address the cornerback room? How will they address it in the portal? How will some of these younger guys like Tariq Watson, like Rylan Kelly continue to develop? Will Victor Pless be a guy that has to play minutes? Will Zaquan Bryan come into the fall and absolutely ball out and push for opportunity? How do we do it? Because it is probably priority number one, numero uno, the number one concern for me moving forward is the cornerback room. Now we'll get to talk to Coach Nick Monroe, aka Swag Daddy, and Coach Joe Rossi was asked about that in the presser yesterday by Andy Greeter of the Pioneer Press. He said, "Do you call him Swag Daddy?" And it was one of the best exchanges I've seen in one of these pressers in quite some time. And he kind of just, Joe Rossi sat there. He said, "No, I don't." Now, he did admit, he did call him Swag Daddy once, and Nick Monroe's response was, "Okay, Grinch." So he said as soon as that came back, he knew he was done with it, and that is a wrap on those nicknames for those coaches. Now, we'll continue to call him Swag Daddy here at the podcast, but I'm excited. We're going to get to talk to Coach Debo. We're going to get to talk to Coach Swag Daddy Monroe. We're going to get to talk to Coach Souter this Thursday. So definitely be sure to give me a follow over at Gophers Kane Rob, where we'll post some of the videos from that presser. But we'll see how he continues to work with these cornerbacks and help develop them into maybe some top guys, some guys to really be respected and to fear in the league. He's worked with a number of guys that have gone on to play in the NFL from Syracuse. So I'm excited to see what potential can hold there, but we absolutely need to address it more. Now, the wide receiver room is point number 2 of what you need to watch in this spring. How does it shake out? Crab probably won't be here for the spring at all. So who starts to make a name for themselves? Who starts to get more comfortable? Who starts to make bigger explosive plays? Who starts to be more consistent? Those are the things you're going to want to keep an eye on. Will it be the 2 transfers coming in that pair up with Daniel Jackson a lot? Will Christian Hoskins really start to click and put it together? Will Lemecky Brockington really push to make himself be one of those true featured guys as opposed to maybe the true 2 behind them? That is the things you're going to want to keep in mind. Also, keep an eye on Kenrick Lanier and how he shakes out and how he grows. I think he has a lot of potential, but we'll see how he puts it all together with this Gophers team. So those are the top 2. We got number 3 of how the O-line will shake out further. Continue to watch the different combinations. Maybe Quinn Carroll kicks back out to the right tackle. I hope not. I love that right side of the line, but I'm not the one making the decisions. These coaches see it day in and day out. And if that's one thing that the coaching staff has proven time and time and time again, is that they know what they're doing with this offensive line. So I trust it regardless. There's talent in that room regardless. I'm excited to see how it continues to shake out. Will Greg Johnson push for more time? Will Tyler Cooper solidify himself in that left guard spot? Who will officially take that number 1 true center spot? All that and more. Keep an eye on it for moving forward in the spring practices. So those are the top 3, but the number 4 one, and maybe one of the top ones overall, is how can the Gophers continue to increase the pressure? How can they increase the pressure from the D-line on the quarterback, both this spring and this fall? How do you get guys like Devin Eastern continuing to grow and build confidence and add that extra chip, that extra length to mess up the run game, to take 2 blockers with him, to really create holes and cause chaos for the quarterback? Guys like Devin Eastern, guys like Darnell Jeffries, guys like Kyler Baugh, those are guys interior that you're going to see a lot of reps from. We also saw a little bit of Logan Richter in there inside as well. Who else did we see? We saw Jacob Schuster getting some looks in there with the 2s. So how will the internal squad put it together? We also saw some Nate Becker with the 2s and 3s. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. Can he push for more opportunity and minutes? More of a veteran guy that came in at the same time as a Daniel Jackson. So he's got some experience with the program. We'll see how he continues to develop. And then on the outside, you've got Stroud, you've got Josh Joyner. Both of them are growing and continuing to come into their own. They could be real difference makers. But then you've got Anthony Smith out there. You got Jalen Logan Redding creating opportunities on the edge. I think these are some of the guys that you're really going to want to keep an eye on. And then Hayden Schwartz, I'm going to throw his name into the mix as well. How can he continue to push into more role, more opportunity, more snaps? Those guys on the edge are going to be the real question, because we know Ja Joyner and Danny Strigow are going to get looks, but how do those younger guys continue to build it when Strigow, when they need breathers, when they need moments? How can Smith, how can Schwartz, how can Jalen Logan-Redding be the next man up to still keep that pressure on, keep that iron hot, and keep those quarterbacks confused? That is going to be what to look for moving forward with the Gophers program. And the fifth point for the spring and what needs to happen is the extra work. Cody Lindenberg talked about this. We mentioned it a little bit earlier when we were talking about Greg Johnson, but the extra work, the scheduled practices are there. The workouts are there. You know that all has to happen. To be a part of the team, to be a player moving forward and have opportunities, you have to be at all those things, showing out, pushing yourself, etc. But what do you do outside of it? What extra film are you watching? What extra drills are you doing? What extra things are you working on now in the spring? What are you going to do in the summer? And how do you do it in the fall? What is the extra stuff? Because every team in the country is going to have practices. Every team in the country is going to work hard, be in the strength rooms. Every team in the conference, the country, you name it, is doing that. But how do you go further? How do you take more upon yourself to go further than these other teams, to get a 1-up, get a 2-up on some of these other programs, to show you are the team of the Big Ten West. You are the team, the cream of the crop, the top of the class. That is what takes this team from good and hardworking to great. That is how this Gophers team can put themselves into the conversation and really upset some of these teams that they will be not favored against, some of these teams that they will be underdogs or looked down against. The Gophers can win a lot of games on the schedule. Maybe every game on the schedule. Now, do I think they'll win every game on the schedule? No. There's bound to be a loss or two. There's bound to be maybe even 3 losses, 4 losses. But how can you put yourself into every game and make it a dogfight? How can you compete with the Ohio States? How can you compete with the Michigans? And it all starts with extra work upon yourself and pushing yourself further to be the best. So those are the 5 things this Gophers team needs to do over the spring. Those are the 5 things we're watching over the spring and as we move into the fall. That's going to do it for us so far. We've got another practice coming up next week. We've got some pressers with some of the new staff this Thursday. Be sure to hit subscribe. Let me know your questions down below. Other things you want to know about spring practice, I'm happy to answer in the comments. I'll look forward to it then. This is Kane Rob signing off. Row the boat. Sky Yuma. Go Gophers.